WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Montgomery Mosaic features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Here now is your host, Deborah Milo.
Well, good morning, Montgomery County, and thank you for joining us for the March edition of Montgomery Mosaic. I'm your host, Deborah Milo. Well, March is an exciting time as we celebrate National Women's History Month, where we commemorate and celebrate the vital role of women in American history. But before we get started with today's show, I wanted to let you know that the Montgomery County Commission for Women is actually presenting the 2018 Girl Power Contest with the theme, The First Female U.S. President. County residents of all ages are actually presenting the 2018 Girl Power Contest with the theme, The First Female U.S. President. County residents of all ages are encouraged to submit a short story, a poem, a drawing, or any creative effort that you can imagine. Now, the contest will run from March the 1st through the 31st, and you can get more information at www.montgomerycounty.md.gov/CFW/. Let me repeat that. www.montgomerycounty.md.gov/CFW/. It's going to be a really great contest, and so I encourage you to become a part of history in the making. Now, to help us celebrate women's accomplishments, my guest today is Dee Howard Richards. She's the Assistant Chief with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services. Dee, welcome to Montgomery Mosaic.
Good morning, Miss Milo. How are you?
I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thank you.
I love how you said Miss Milo. We've been knowing each other for a few
long
years.
time, right?
Before we begin, I'd like for you to share just a little bit about yourself and what really inspired you to a career in fire and rescue service, because I'm always interested in how people got started in their chosen profession.
Okay, so you knew you were asking me to go back almost 30 years, right? And it feels funny just saying that. But, you know, I think I started out just wanting to be involved, wanting to help my community. And I had an interest in action and in public safety in general. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of my college years, I was thinking about going into sports medicine. I knew I liked the action and things like that, kind of a team-related event. And because of that, it kind of got an interest with the sports medicine, got an interest in emergency medical technicians and things like that, and found out that I could volunteer at my local firehouse if I and could further my interest in emergency medicine, emergency medical technician.
Okay.
And walked into my first fire station and was bitten by the firehouse bug. Yes.
Firehouse bug.
Yes. And didn't know that I was a candidate for that, right? I didn't know that I was susceptible to that.
That's amazing. Now, see, you would think most girls at that age, young women at that age, that's not something I would have thought about, I got to tell you.
Listen, it's not something I thought about at all. I had no idea because, to be quite honest with you, I had never in my life, aspired to be, because I had never seen anybody that looked like me in that role. Right. And so, just walking into a fire station for the first time, I really didn't have any expectations. I didn't know what. But then somebody took me under their wing and explained to me a little bit more about the job and about the process. And so here I am a bunch of years later.
A bunch of years later.
A bunch of years. I can't even believe it. To say that, it just sounds ridiculous.
You're only 30, so.
Yes. So from my mother's womb, right?
That's right. Right. So I want to talk first about women firefighters. I've always admired firefighters as a whole, but then you think about women firefighters because, I'm just always fascinated. And I want you to talk a little bit about the history of women firefighters.
So although I can't give you an exact year of when women started in the fire service, I can tell you that probably almost 40 years ago now, women started in Montgomery County and have since, added our numbers and added our confidence and added our capabilities with Montgomery County Fire Rescue. So for me personally, being almost 30 years, I've seen the service evolve. I've had the privilege of being involved with national groups, national organizations, local groups, local organizations, support groups that have kind of helped me through my fire service career. And, one of the things I think is important for the history is that women have I believe, have helped make the fire service better. We add just a different layer, just a different layer of capabilities. So for some of the equipment that people were generally accustomed to muscling through, just kind of bullying their way through, picking it up and heaving it around. We learned with women in the fire service that our strength tends to be in our legs and in our hips.
This is true.
And so, teach us how. And we kind of made, even the instructors kind of have to think about how to present carrying techniques, lifting techniques to us, different. And we've always had the brain power, right? We can think our way through things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so you combine that with somebody just accepting the fact that perhaps we do things a little bit different, or our capabilities are a little bit different. Teach us how to lift, teach us how to carry
things,
teach us how to redistribute the weight. And I think we helped improve the fire service as a whole. Lessen the injuries, because there are not as many injuries now because we've learned how to be smarter, not harder.
I like that. And I'm laughing because our sound engineer is cracking up about that statement. So now I want to make sure I understand this. How many women are fire chiefs in Montgomery County? Is it just yourself?
It is not just myself. So at the chief officer rank, and just a little quick, we have the fire chief. And so I often say I am not the chief, I am a chief.
And is that our Scott Goldstein?
That is Fire Chief Scott Goldstein.
Have to give him a shout out.
So he is the fire chief. And then below that, we have the rank of division chief. We have one female in that rank of Chief Diane Zuspan, who's about to retire here soon.
Diane, yes.
And then at my rank, I am an assistant chief, and there's only one assistant chief in Montgomery County. And then below that, we have 4 battalion chiefs. So we do have women represented in the chief ranks. Among the chief officers, I believe we constitute about 14% of all the chief officers.
That's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
That's not bad at all.
Not bad at all.
So, and I'm going to ask you to go back a little further.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about what duties does a firefighter actually perform? Because, I think we as the general public, we think we know. Just by seeing the fire trucks and the, fire and rescue service.
Yes.
But what kind of duties does a firefighter actually perform?
I think probably the better question is, what don't we do?
Okay, even better.
That's probably a better question, is what don't we do? Because I think anytime people find themselves in distress or needing help or having a question or just in general not knowing what to do about a certain situation, they freely call 911 and we're there to help. So anything from medical emergencies to fires to rescues to, we're community educators too. We are big community educators. And so we enjoy going out, visiting schools, becoming involved in, local community groups and being a part of the community. So it's probably more of a question of what don't we do? I'd like to say we are a full service have a full service county agents and public safety agents.
And educators.
Yes, and educators, certainly.
So now I'm interested. I know you talked a little bit about some of the qualities that women bring to the fire and rescue service, but how do women firefighters train as well?
Well, we train, the training is the same. We don't lower standards, okay? That we want to be clear, because I think the majority of my counterparts don't want it to be thought or don't want to be viewed as standards had to be lowered for us. So we train the same as everyone else. We're firefighters, and so we train as firefighters. And so we may collectively, as a service, learn how to do something, again, smarter, not harder, how to lift, how to carry, how to push, how to pull. But our training is the same. So we are a physically demanding job. We work long hours. We work in all kind of conditions, whether it's raining or snowing, or we don't necessarily worry about what the weather is doing when we come to work. We just know we have to perform. And so the training standards don't change for us.
I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. That's important.
And I think most women want that message to go out there.
Oh, yes.
We don't want you to think that because we're females in the fire service or because we're women in public safety in general. And that goes for I have to give a shout out to my police counterparts and my sisters over on the police service.
That's right.
We don't change our standards. We believe we make it better.
I think so, too. Good morning again, listeners, and thank you for tuning in to Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL. I'm Deborah Milo, your host, and today I have the pleasure of talking with D. Howard Richards. Dee's the Assistant Chief with the Division of Operations with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, and we're having a really good conversation talking about women firefighters. But before we resume our conversation, I wanted to also give you another announcement, let you know that the Montgomery County Board of Elections is seeking registered voters to serve as election workers for the gubernatorial primary election scheduled for June 26th. Now, voters that are multilingual, especially those that are fluent in English and Spanish, are very much needed. So you can get information by visiting the website www.montgomerykountymd.gov/elections. And I'll repeat that, www.montgomerykountymd.gov/elections. And now let's get back to more great conversation with D. Howard Richards. D, tell me something.
Yes.
As a woman, did you find it difficult or challenging to climb through the ranks to get to where you are now?
I have to say I have been completely blessed and supported. I cannot say that I had a tough time. More so, I can't say that my road was tougher than anyone else's. Mm-hmm. I was and have always been surrounded by people who were supportive, people who were willing to show me the way. And that I stand on a bunch of people's shoulders. And so, of course, I had to come prepared. I had to become ready. I had to prepare myself. I had to study. And what's that saying? What study to show thyself approved?
That's right.
And so I had to go through that process. But so did all of my counterparts. My male counterparts did as well. And so I think I just positioned myself, studied, and made sure that I was ready. And I don't believe my road was that much harder than anybody else's. And but you know what? I got to tell you that being working for Montgomery County government, right? A progressive, lean forward, proactive agency, a county government agency, that has to, count for something. I know that there are a lot of folks, a lot of women, and I recognize the fact that there are several women and a lot of even neighboring jurisdictions that don't have such an easy road.
Yeah.
So I think just timing for me, those things, it has just worked out well.
And see, you're so right, because we are so fortunate and blessed to live in a county that is progressive, where there's caring, obvious caring, about the roles that we play, and respectful.
Right.
That's respectful.
And in public safety, we have had leadership that has been accepting of women in leadership roles. And so, I'm appreciative of that.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I've, from where I sit, especially working within the arena of communications, it's always great to see when the managers, the leadership team support women, everyone.
Right. But
to be able to aspire to things.
I don't want to diminish, because I am well aware that there are instances where people don't have the same experience. Right. And so I don't want to take away from anybody.
Absolutely.
Who has had the struggle and has had to, have to pave a really hard road. I don't want to take away from that, but I can just say my experience has been a positive one overall.
And see, that's so good to hear. It's really good to hear. When you have a chance to hear women talk about those positive assets, those attributes.
And a positive support group.
Absolutely.
And, and the village of people that, that help raise you up, because I certainly have not done it by myself. I have a supportive husband, a great son, co-workers, church family members, community,
Absolutely.
All of that pours into me and makes me who I am.
I love that, not to mention me.
Yes, and for your avenue, giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Deborah.
This is Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL, and I'm Deborah Milo, your host. Now, after a quick break, we'll come back to talk more with D. Howard Richards with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, so stay with us.
America. America.
Welcome back to Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL. I'm Deborah Milo, your host, and we're talking to D. Howard Richards with the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service about women in the Fire and Rescue Service.
Hello.
Dee and I were having an outstanding conversation about how amazing firefighting as a career can be. You know, I was going to ask you, I'm sure that recruitment is also something that you have to work with or work within. Talk about some of the challenges of recruitment that you've seen before.
So recruitment is a big deal, and I recognize that. I think we recognize that as a service, not only locally, but as a service as a whole. And recruitment, so I think the challenge that we face is that most women, particularly most women of color, don't see themselves in this role. And that's the challenge. So the challenge is convincing people who look like me that you too can do the job.
Absolutely.
And to consider it to be, I think a lot of particularly African American women don't consider it as a career option. And so the message to get out there is I am so much like the folks who are listening to this radio station. I am, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm one of those people who's trying to figure out what to do with your kid for camp in the summertime.
I remember those days.
Trying to figure out how I'm going to get to work and all of those things. So I am whoever's listening. I am that person. So recruitment starts, I think, with just a personal touch and developing those relationships and giving somebody an opportunity to envision themselves, fill in the role that you are sitting in. And so I think relationships, community outreach, and that you asked earlier, what do firefighters do? This is part of it, recruitment, right? And backfilling those positions because at 30 years, I probably won't be around for another 30. So I have to make sure that there's somebody who's capable of bringing their strengths, their talents, their capabilities to the fire service to help keep it moving forward, to help it be progressive.
And that's creating that legacy.
Yes.
So that, you reach back and you say, okay, you're pulling this person in.
Yes.
And you're letting her know, listen, I have been in your shoes before. Here you are. This is something you can and should do.
That is such an important message. That's a big deal. And we have to let young women know that it is a career choice, it's a career option. It has been a great career for me, a path.
And see, that's wonderful to hear. And, the ability to convey that to young people, young women, to be women of color, to say, hey, listen, this is something that not only you can do, but be eager to do it.
And I didn't, yes, I am an assistant chief now, but I didn't walk in the door as an assistant chief.
No.
And I didn't necessarily, when I walked in the door, see myself in that particular role. And sometimes, I still say, wow, how did I get here? But it's been a path, and again, it's been a supported path, and for me, a relatively positive journey.
And see, that's a good thing when the journey can be positive. You mentioned earlier about professional organizations, and you and I both probably belong to a number of them, to say the least. But talk about professional organization for women firefighters, and does the county have one?
So the county does have members. There's a national organization called iWomen. And they focus on and gather and strengthen and empower women firefighters. And that generally when we think of firefighting, particularly on the East Coast, we think of structural fires, building fires, and things like that. But we have sisters on the West Coast as well who are very proficient in firefighting, wildland firefighting, and things like that. So iWomen brings us all together and talks to us and teaches us and empowers us. And so great organization to be a part of, bringing together firefighters, chief officers, people of all ranks from all parts of the country, different levels of experience. And we do have some members here in Montgomery County, but we also have some international members as well.
That's outstanding. So there's support there.
Professional
development.
Yeah.
That's really great.
A tremendous amount of support. And, when we go to neighboring jurisdictions, we support each other.
Absolutely.
And so if you go to Prince George's County, Fairfax, we tend to support each other. Good thing. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. County friends, this is Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL, and I'm your host, Deborah Milo. And for those that have just tuned in, I'd like to wish you a very happy Women's History Month, where we recognize the amazing contributions of women everywhere. Today, I'm honored to have as my guest D. Howard Richards, Division Chief with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services. And Dee was just sharing some aspects of being a female firefighter, specifically the professional organization and the development. What would you consider to be the strongest asset of a female firefighter?
Well, I think we bring just a different perspective to the table. So, you know, if it's making a rescue, if it's dealing with a sick patient, if it's how to approach tactically, a fire ground or a fire setting, we bring a different perspective. And I think, when we talk about diversity and not only in the workforce, but just in life, right? Somebody who brings a different perspective, who brings a different way of looking at things is a plus in my mind.
And so you're right about that. You have to have that diversity all around.
And a different, just multiple ways to look at things. And we all know that there's never just one approach. There are multiple approaches.
That's right.
And one is not necessarily better than the other. It's just different.
It's just different. We're all unique.
Yes.
We're all unique, and so we do bring different perspectives, which is so valuable. And that's something we have to focus on.
Yes.
So let me ask you a question. What is the most appealing aspect of being a firefighter?
Because I'm out and about. I get to see people, do what I'm doing now. Right, I get to interact with people. I get to meet people. I get to go into schools and businesses and churches and just have the pleasure of building those relationships. And for me, that's been a big deal. It's the relationship building that has helped strengthen me.
That leads me to want to ask you also about communications. Talk a little bit about the communication skills you've built up over time, because I'm quite sure you've had your times when you've had to resolve conflict, which none of us ever like, but we grow and we learn from that conflict. Talk about the types of communication skills that you've built up over the course of time.
I think it's important to hear people, to treat people as individuals, and to really hear what somebody is saying. And while, you always want to be fair, but things may not necessarily be equal. Does that make sense?
It makes lots of sense.
So you want to be fair. You want to treat everybody fairly, use good judgment. But it may not necessarily, decisions that you make may not necessarily be equal all the time, may not be equal portions all the time. Because you have to treat an individual. And I think it's, now for me, I think it's so important to hear people.
Right.
And to hear them not only with your ears, but hear them with your heart and your soul. And get to the core of what they're really saying.
In other words, they're human beings.
They're human beings.
Have that heart to heart.
Have that human heart.
That's so important.
And try to mix that. Of course, you always have your policy and procedure
course.
Your standards that you have to operate that you have to go through, but still with your heart, hear people what they're saying and treat them as individuals.
So talk a little bit about why teamwork is so important in this fire service. And I know it's an obvious question, but I think our listeners would really like to understand and just kind of paint a picture for them as to why teamwork is so critical and valuable.
Well, as firefighters, we never go anywhere by ourselves. Even if we send just one ambulance, there are always two people.
That's true.
When we are firefighting, we always operate in teams of two. When we go anywhere, when we run calls, people may see us at the grocery store and we have the whole crew with us. We have the fire engine and the dryer. Right. And we're going through the aisle. So we're accustomed to operating as a team. And that team building then leads to a cohesive unit, and that's who you want. You want a team of folks coming to help you through your time of need, not just an individual, somebody who's looking for that self-gratification, but somebody who operates together.
And that's, once again, where the heart comes in as well.
Yes.
You're listening to Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL. I'm Deborah Milo, your host, and my guest today is D. Howard Richards, Assistant Chief of the Division of Operations with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, and Dee is sharing her experiences and wisdom about being a female firefighter. This half hour just goes way too quickly for me.
It's super quick. I didn't think I expected it to be longer, but that's okay.
Well, you know what? I'd like to wrap up today's conversation by asking you to share some pearls of wisdom about fire services as a career for women.
It is, you too can sit in this seat. And it just takes a willing heart, somebody who wants to serve their community, somebody who wants to be involved. They don't, necessarily, their personality is not one that just sits by or sits back and just watches things happen. Be involved, be a part of. And, I find that a lot of people say, well, I could never do that. But I find that in times of need, when we have looked not only locally but nationally at large crisis, people get involved. And so you can do it.
Yes.
People get involved. People want to know, how can I help? And this is a start. Volunteering at your local fire house or considering a career in the fire service. Just like the time we've spent here on the radio, the time goes by really quickly once you involve yourself.
Once you involve yourself.
Once you get your hands dirty, put your hands in, and it's good. You meet a lot of great people, build a lot of wonderful relationships, and as with anything, that's what it's all about.
Well, Dee, I can't thank you enough for spending some of your time with us.
Thank you so much for even inviting me.
No, I look forward to having you back. And county friends, as always, that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. And again, I'd like to thank my guest and friend, Dee Howard Richards, Assistant Chief with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services, for taking time to talk with us today. Now listen, I don't want you to forget to tune in again next month for another Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS HD2. And of course, worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Till next time, be good to yourself and others and make it an amazing day. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Montgomery Mosaic, featuring topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. For more information or a copy of the show, email publicinformation@montgomerymd.gov or call 240-777-6507. Be sure to tune in at this time on the second Wednesday every month for Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com.